Juneteenth, a single word that holds generations of history, sorrow, resilience, and celebration. If you've heard of it but aren't quite sure what it's all about, or if you know the basics but want to dig deeper, this video is for you. Today we'll explore the origins of Juneteenth, how it became a holiday, what it means to communities today, and how it's celebrated. We'll also share some fascinating facts at the end, so stay tuned. Let's begin with the history. To understand Juneteenth, we need to go back to the early 1860s, during one of the most defining moments in American history, the Civil War. The war, which began in 1861, was fought over many issues, but the central conflict was slavery. The Southern states, also called the Confederacy, wanted to maintain and expand the system of enslaving Black people. The Northern states, the Union, were moving towards abolition. On January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. It declared that all enslaved people in Confederate states were now free. However, this could only be enforced in places under Union control. It should also be noted that this did not free any slaves in the Union states. That would come later. Because of how slavery worked, many slaves did not even hear about this proclamation because what information they could access was tightly controlled by their masters. At this time, it was illegal to teach slaves to read in many places, so most could not read the newspaper even if they had glimpsed one. Without modern conveniences like phones and the internet, information traveled slowly during this time period. So while the proclamation was a turning point and a symbolic victory, it didn't immediately free every enslaved person. In fact, many remained in bondage for months or even years after the document was signed. This brings us to Texas. At the time, Texas was the westernmost Confederate state, and slavery there continued even after the Emancipation Proclamation. Because of its geographic distance and limited Union presence, Texas became something of a refuge for slaveholders hoping to evade the order. Some historians estimate that tens of thousands of enslaved people were relocated to Texas during the Civil War. It wasn't until June 19, 1865, more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, that Union General Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas with federal troops. He delivered General Order No. 3, which announced that all enslaved people were now free and that there would be a relationship of employer and hired laborer and not master and slave. Imagine that moment for the enslaved people. Families hearing the news for the first time, people realizing they were now legally free. Joy, disbelief, confusion, tears, celebration. That announcement became the beginning of Juneteenth, short for June and 19th. It marks the true on-the-ground enforcement of emancipation in the final Confederate state. Slavery was officially abolished throughout the entire United States on December 6, 1865, with the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This amendment made slavery an involuntary servitude illegal except for as punishment for a crime, a loophole which would be exploited. Soon after, newly freed people in Texas began to celebrate June 19th every year. These gatherings included prayer, music, food, and speeches. It became a time to honor freedom, reflect on struggles, and pass down stories from one generation to the next. Even during times of economic hardship or legal segregation, Black communities continued to observe Juneteenth. Churches and community centers played a big role in organizing celebrations. People wore their best clothes, often symbolic of new beginnings, and gathered for parades, readings of the Emancipation Proclamation, cookouts, and spiritual ceremonies. Over time, as African Americans moved to other parts of the country, they carried the tradition with them. However, Juneteenth didn't receive widespread national recognition until more recently. In 1980, Texas became the first state to officially recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday. That opened the door for other states to follow. Momentum grew steadily, especially in the 2000s and 2010s, as more people learned about the holiday's importance. Then, on June 17, 2021, Juneteenth was signed into law as a federal holiday in the United States. President Joe Biden signed signed the bill after it passed with bipartisan support in Congress. The move came after years of activism, petitions, and a broader national reckoning with issues of race, history, and justice. So what does Juneteenth mean today? For many, Juneteenth is a time of celebration, but it's also a time of remembrance. It's a moment to honor ancestors who endured slavery and fought for freedom. It's a chance to reflect on the long road towards justice and the work that still remains. And it's a day for communities to come together with pride, joy, music, food, and storytelling. Juneteenth celebrations vary by regions, but many include festivals, concerts, historical reenactments, and community service. Some cities host parades, while others hold art exhibits, panel discussions, and educational workshops. The colors red, black, and green are associated with Pan-African pride and often appear in decorations. These colors are a powerful symbol of unity, pride, and freedom for people of African descent. Red symbolizes the blood that was shed by African ancestors and Black Americans in the fight for freedom and equality. Black represents the people's Black identity, heritage, and strength. And green stands for the rich land of Africa, the ancestral homeland, and it also symbolizes growth, life, and hope for the future. While the traditional Juneteenth flag with red, white, and blue highlights African American history within the United States. The red, black, and green colors connect Juneteenth to the broader African dysphoria and the ongoing struggle for justice and liberation around the world. Many people use these Pan-African colors during Juneteenth to honor both the specific history of emancipation and the global legacy of African heritage. Red foods and drinks are especially popular at Juneteenth events. Common foods include red velvet cake, strawberries, and hibiscus tea. You'll also see barbecue, baked beans, cornbread, collard greens, and other dishes deeply rooted in Black culinary traditions. Juneteenth is also a time when families share stories of hardship, perseverance, migration, and cultural pride. Oral history plays a vital role in keeping the memory of Juneteenth alive and relevant. One important thing to remember is that while Juneteenth marks the end of slavery, it also reminds us that freedom is an ongoing journey. Systems of inequity, racism, and injustice didn't end in 1865. Juneteenth helped spark important conversations about civil rights, education, access to opportunity, and what true equality looks like. Let's wrap up with some fun and fascinating facts about Juneteenth. But before we do, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. I'm trying to grow my small channel, so if you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to subscribe and hit the notification button so you'll never miss a video. And let me know in the comments below how you celebrate Juneteenth. I would love to hear your stories. Now, let's talk about some fun and surprising facts related to Juneteenth. Did you know that the Juneteenth flag has a unique design? It features a bursting star in the center, symbolizing Texas, the Lone Star State, and the freedom of African Americans throughout the U.S. The arc across the flag represents a new horizon, and the colors red, white, and blue echo the American flag, showing that freedom belongs to everyone. For decades, Juneteenth was celebrated with little recognition outside of Black communities, but that didn't stop people from keeping the tradition alive. In some towns, people would travel long distances or even raise money to buy land specifically for Juneteenth events. One example is Emancipation Park in Houston, Texas, which was purchased in 1872 for Juneteenth gatherings and is still used for celebrations today. In 2020, Google reported searches for Juneteenth hit an all-time high. That year saw a massive rise in awareness due to global protests for racial justice and efforts to educate the public about Black history in America. And finally, Juneteenth isn't only celebrated in the United States. Some people observe it internationally, especially in places with large African American populations or historical ties to the transatlantic slave trade. It's a reminder that the impacts of slavery and the fight for freedom has global significance. So as we mark Juneteenth each year, we do more than remember a date. We honor the voices that were once silenced. We recognize the endurance of a people who refuse to be broken, and we commit ourselves to building a more just and inclusive future. Thanks for watching, and I hope this video gave you new insights into the powerful story of Juneteenth. If you're planning a lesson, leading a discussion, or reflecting with your family, this is a meaningful place to start. Parents and teachers, if you're interested in educational materials that make learning fun and engaging for students while making prep time easy for you, please click the link in the description to visit my website. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to get messy and make lots of mistakes today. Bye!